If the true power isn't in repressing your desires, but in listening to them, deeply, without judgment. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung understood this truth, like few others. We are all immersed in a thick fog, a fog where the decisions we think we're making independently were already predetermined by invisible forces, by unresolved wounds, by unrecognized impulses, by voices we've learned to ignore over time. And in that fog, desire whispers. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It murmurs, softly but constantly, like a presence that refuses to be silenced. You can feel it, even if you don't want to. It's in the way you adjust your clothes before walking out the door. It's in the anxiety that tightens your chest when you feel invisible. It's in that strange fatigue that hits you when you're left alone with yourself. There's something there, something ancient, something primal, something you've learned to bury, but that never really left. And now, right in this moment, we're going to go down together into that space. Not to condemn desire, not to tame it or shame it, but to face it, to strip it of its masks, to hear its true voice. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in your life, you'll realize there is a power inside it that you've never dared to touch. Close your eyes, breathe deeply. What you're about to hear may disturb you, but it will awaken what's been sleeping. Have you ever loved someone you should never have loved? Have you ever felt an urge so powerful it made you feel ashamed? Have you ever wanted something with such intensity that you pretended not to want it at all, just to survive your own guilt? That is where the wound begins. And where the wound begins, desire is also born. That's where the abyss opens. For Carl Jung, desire was never a shallow whim of the flesh. He didn't see it as something superficial or trivial. No, he saw it as a language, a mysterious, ancient language that speaks directly to the soul. And among all human desires, there was one that pulsed the deepest, that came from the oldest part of us, and that was the most dangerous, sexual desire. But hold on, don't confuse it. We're not talking about pornography, about objectified bodies, about the erotic cliché sold to your eyes on a screen. We're talking about eros, desire as a psychic force, as a longing to belong, as the deep hunger to be seen, touched, acknowledged, not just by anyone, but by someone who truly sees you. Have you ever felt that? That craving that doesn't come from pleasure, but from absence, from that silent emptiness inside that screams to matter to someone, that cries out to exist in the eyes of another. That kind of desire builds obsessions. It sculpts the characters we play. It carves the masks we wear every day. Jung said that anything within you that you don't acknowledge will turn against you. And desire, when denied, doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. It slips into the shadows, and in the shadows, it becomes dangerous. It begins to guide your decisions without your consent. It's there in how you choose your partner. It's there when you sabotage your own relationships. It lives in that strange emptiness that persists even when you've achieved everything you thought you wanted. Jung didn't define libido as just sexual energy. For him, it was something far greater, a life force, a creative energy, a sacred current that fuels your being. But when it's repressed, when it's ignored, that same energy starts to decay. It transforms into anxiety, into rage, into addiction, into compulsions that you can't explain. Have you noticed? That same force that could give you wings can start to poison you from the inside. Why do you try so hard to be accepted? Why does it matter to you what people would think? even when no one is watching, because there's a desire behind all of it. The desire to be loved, the desire to be wanted. And when that desire goes unacknowledged, it burns you from within. But there's more. Repressed desire doesn't just hurt. It creates masks. It constructs personas. You built one. We all did. That version of yourself that smiles in public, that looks composed, that seems successful, kind, admirable. But the truth? That version of you trembles when you're alone. Because it's not who you really are. It's the wall you built to hold back the storm of your desires. And do you know what happens when you live behind that wall for too long? You break. You begin to fragment. You become divided between what you feel and what you show, between who you are and who you pretend to be. And in that crack, in that fracture, desire waits. It watches. It grows. Until one day, it erupts. Maybe in a strange dream, maybe in an impulsive act, maybe in a devastating passion that pulls you violently from the ground. Because that force isn't rational. It doesn't follow your carefully drawn plans. It doesn't care about your calendar, your responsibilities, or your image. It wants one thing, only one thing, to be recognized. Jung called it the shadow, that hidden part of you, the place where everything you suppress, deny, or are too ashamed to admit goes to live. It's everything you pretend not to feel, everything you bury deep within, hoping it'll stay silent. But it doesn't. It festers in the darkness, quietly shaping your life from the shadows. And now, let me ask you something that might disturb you. How many of the decisions you've made were truly yours? How many were born not from conscious choice, but from a hidden longing you didn't even know existed? The most unsettling truth is this. The very desire you've spent your life denying is often the one driving your fate. You believe you're in control. You tell yourself that you're the one choosing, the one steering the wheel. But what if it's actually that hidden part, the one you refuse to acknowledge, that's been guiding you all along? What if your shadow is the true author of your story? This is the invitation Jung offers us. To look at that desire, not to shame it, not to suppress it further, but to listen, to understand what it's been trying to tell you all these years. And perhaps, if you dare to look closely, you might discover that the very thing you feared the most, the thing you tried hardest to avoid, is actually the key to your freedom. Have you ever wondered why you keep making the same mistakes? Why you're always drawn to the same kind of people, the same heartbreaks, the same emotional traps? Why the same patterns keep showing up like ghosts from your past? It's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's unconscious destiny. A script written not in words, but in wounds you never healed. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What does that mean in real life? It means that while you walk through your days believing you're the one making the choices, there's a silent part of you, a part that's hurt, forgotten, or angry, that has already made those choices for you. It means you're not as free as you think. You are being led from within by something you've never dared to face. That something has a name, the shadow. But don't misunderstand it. The shadow isn't just a collection of old traumas or repressed memories. It's alive. It has its own will. It wants, it desires, it moves you, especially when you deny it. In fact, the more you try to ignore it, the stronger it becomes. Have you noticed your obsession with control? That endless need to manage everything, to plan, to anticipate pain, and avoid discomfort. That's not strength. That's a disguise. Control is just the paint you put on chaos. Beneath that surface There's fear. There's rage. There's a storm you've never named. You've convinced yourself you're in charge of your life. But then why? In the silence of the night, when everything is quiet, do you feel that nameless emptiness? Why do certain memories still haunt you with the weight of things left unsaid, unresolved, unforgiven? Why is it that, when you're alone, you sometimes can't even recognize who you are? The answer lies in another concept Jung explored deeply: the persona. That's the social mask you wear, the version of yourself that smiles, behaves, performs. The you that others find acceptable, polished, polite, capable, but incomplete. Not false in a malicious way, just false enough to feel like a prison. The persona isn't evil, it's necessary. We all need a face to show the world. The danger comes when you forget it's a mask, when you believe that's all you are, when you forget that behind the smile, there's a scream, that behind the efficiency, there's exhaustion that runs through generations, that behind the calm, there's a buried desire that never had the courage to speak its name. You might appear peaceful on the outside, but your unconscious is burning inside, and you can't fix it with logic. You can't soothe it with affirmations. The unconscious doesn't care about pretty words. It listens to symbols, to patterns, to repetition. That's why you sabotage yourself. That's why you feel panic before big decisions. Why you're drawn to people who hurt you or remind you of something familiar, even if it's painful. They touch something deep within you that even you don't fully understand. That's your unconscious trying to speak, and when you ignore it, it screams. It screams through your symptoms, through your failures, through the cycles you can't seem to break. Have you noticed that certain relationships always end the same way? That you're stuck in a loop that feels eerily familiar, like an emotional déjà vu? You're not imagining it. You're reliving something. Because what isn't healed repeats itself. But why? Why repeat what hurts? The answer is devastating, and yet deeply human. You repeat because, somewhere deep inside, you're trying to heal. You unconsciously recreate the original wound, hoping that this time you'll react differently, that maybe this time the story will end another way. But how can you change the ending if you don't even know the script is repeating? You'll only escape the loop when you finally confront what lies behind your mask. When you gather the courage to look beneath the illusion of control. And what will you find there? Desire, fear, shame, a desperate hunger to be seen, and a silent, smoldering rage from betraying yourself over and over just to be accepted. Yes, you betrayed yourself. You silenced your truth. You reshaped who you were. You edited your soul, all to fit in, all to please. And the price? You lost parts of yourself. You strayed from your essence. That's why, even when everything in your life seems to be going right, you still feel like something is terribly wrong. That ache inside you is your soul knocking on the door. It's whispering, "Come home. Come back to everything you once felt." But to come home, you have to drop the mask. And that journey is anything but comfortable. You'll have to face the part of you that desired someone forbidden, the part that took pleasure in envy, that lied to be loved, that smiled while hating itself. That part is also you. Denying it won't save you. It will only split you. There is no salvation in repression. The only way out is through integration, to accept that within you lives both light and shadow, both desire and modesty, both strength and fragility, and none of them is more correct than the other. The real problem was never the desire itself. It was your refusal to hear what it was trying to say. You can keep pretending that everything is under control, but deep inside, something knows the truth. And that truth is raw, painful, but also freeing. You never had control. But now, maybe for the first time, you can begin to gain it by taking the first step, removing the mask. There's a force within you that refuses to be tamed. It doesn't want explanations. It doesn't seek approval. It doesn't care about rules or expectations. It just is, untamed, unfiltered, wild. This force has an ancient name, one forgotten by religion, hidden by rules, and twisted by morality. And yet, it's still there, beating inside you, waiting, not to destroy you, but to free you. Carl Jung called it eros. But eros is not the romantic love you hear about in songs, nor is it the sexual energy glamorized in movies. It's not the desperate longing dressed up in poetic words. Eros is something much deeper, much more essential. It is the vital force, the breath that animates flesh, the impulse that raises civilizations, the current that fuels art, the power that shatters egos. It is desire, yes, but desire seen, without filters or shame. It is desire stripped of illusions, observed with unflinching honesty. Jung came to understand that this energy, so intense, so misunderstood, is not confined to the physical body. It seeps into our dreams, into the words we never speak, into the projects we abandon, and the passions that grab us by the soul, dragging us into the rawest, most uncontrollable parts of who we are. Eros is not simply about lust or attraction. It's a sacred fire, the animating spirit behind everything we create and everything we destroy. And like all fire, it has dual nature. It can enlighten or it can consume. That's why Jung insisted. Eros must not be repressed. It must be integrated, because what we repress doesn't vanish. It mutates, it hides, it retaliates. Have you ever noticed that certain people carry a peculiar spark in their eyes? Something wild, almost untamed. A flicker of a presence that survived the brutal massacre of conformity. Those people didn't kill their eros. They befriended it. They learned to listen to that voice, to converse with it, to walk alongside it the way one would tame a wild animal. Not with violence, but with respect. And when you do that, something extraordinary happens. Your desire stops sabotaging you. It begins to guide you. Jung called this process the transmutation of libido, when your most primal energies stop chasing momentary pleasure or social approval, and instead become engines of creativity, forces of meaning, building blocks of an authentic life. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's alchemical work, the kind of deep inner labor that turns lead into gold. You take what is base, chaotic, even shameful, and instead of burying it, you refine it. You make it into something sacred, into art, into bravery, into compassion, into truth. Ask yourself, what drives you to want to be desired? What compels you to fight for recognition? What lies behind your ambition, your hunger for success, your need to be seen, to feel exceptional? If you dig deep enough, you'll find eros. Because eros is at the root of every great creation and every tragic downfall. It is the same force that inspired artists to create timeless masterpieces and drove lovers to ruin themselves chasing an illusion. But only those who fail to understand what lives inside them are destroyed. Only those who fight against their own nature get lost. Jung believed that the true process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are, requires confronting eros directly, not dominating it and not surrendering to it, but integrating it, making it your companion, your equal, not your slave, not your tyrant, but your ally, because Eros carries your creative power, and where there is creativity, there is healing. Have you ever noticed how your most brilliant ideas often come to you in the most unexpected moments, during the surge of a new passion, or right after a heartbreak that tore you apart? In the middle of emotional chaos, there's Eros again, trying to escape through the only door you left open. The door of art, the door of truth, of expression, of that spontaneous gesture that says what your soul has been aching to release. Now imagine all the energy you've spent trying to hide it, suppress it, control it. What if that same energy had been redirected, channeled, transmuted? How many books could you have written? How many dreams could you have brought to life? How many truths could you have lived if you hadn't been so busy trying to look normal? But it's not too late. Eros is still alive, maybe suffocated, maybe asleep, but alive, waiting. And he doesn't want to be eliminated. He wants to be honored. When you begin to walk with Eros, something inside you shifts. Your presence changes. Your voice deepens. Your gaze carries something people can't quite name, but everyone feels. You're no longer just a character playing a role. You become real. And what is a real person, if not someone who has made peace with their own madness? Do you want power? Then turn your desire into expression. Turn your hunger into creation. Turn your emptiness into awareness. That's the path. That's the work. Not to destroy Eros, but to understand him. To let him live inside you. Not as chaos, but as clarity. Not as destruction, but as purpose. Because within Eros lies your most potent energy, the sacred fire through which all transformation becomes possible. Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens." And when you dare to look within, what you find is not always beautiful or easy to accept. You will see your own Eros, raw, naked, unfiltered, untamed, but not an enemy. It is wild, yes, but not evil. And in that deep gaze, for perhaps the first time, you might truly see yourself. Not the polished version you wish to present to the world, not the one you imagine in your fantasies, but the one that has always existed in the shadows, the one you've hidden, the one you've ignored, the one that aches to be acknowledged. And in that strange, powerful, and often brutal moment of truth, something shifts, something deep. That is where the real transformation begins. Not with a new plan or a better version of yourself, but with the courage to see. Have you ever stopped to consider the possibility that you've never actually been free? I'm not talking about political freedom or your ability to vote, to travel, to choose a career. I'm speaking of something far more intimate, the freedom to be exactly who you are, unapologetically, without masks, without lies, without needing to hide from your own reflection. Jung reminded us that this inner freedom comes at a cost, and the price is steep. You must take full responsibility for your own desire. You can no longer point fingers, no longer blame your upbringing, your parents, the system, or the dogmas of religion. You can no longer say, "They made me this way," because the truth is harder. You silenced yourself. You repressed. You ran away. And now you have two choices: integrate or be consumed. Most people choose consumption. They live trapped, not in a prison built by others, but in one they constructed themselves. Trapped within the persona they built to be accepted. Trapped in the role they agreed to play just to feel worthy of love. How many times did you say yes when your entire body wanted to scream no? How many times did you make love while your soul wasn't even present? How many times did you smile with dead eyes just to avoid conflict or rejection? Do you think all that goes unnoticed by your inner world? It doesn't. it has consequences. And the greatest of all is the slow and painful forgetting of yourself. You get so accustomed to the character you perform that one day, you can no longer remember the way back home, the path to your truest essence. And then one day, when true desire knocks on your door, real, burning, undeniable, you panic, because you know what's at stake. If you let that desire in, everything could fall apart. Your marriage, your job, your carefully crafted reputation, even the image of the balanced person you've worked so hard to maintain. So what do? You run. You run from the very impulse that could set you free, because it also threatens to expose you. But here's the paradox. The more you run, the louder it becomes. Desire doesn't disappear. It waits. It lingers at the edges of your consciousness, pulsing in your dreams, in your sleepless nights, in your unexplained anxiety, in your chronic boredom, in the anger that explodes without warning. Repression makes you sick, but integration, that's terrifying, because to integrate means to accept that you are not one, but many. Inside, you lives a monk, and a savage, a healer, and a destroyer, a loyal lover, and a traitor waiting in the wings. All of them are you. All of them are real. It's painful to look at this internal multiplicity. It challenges everything you've been taught about right and wrong, about good and evil. But in that brave gaze, in that confrontation with your whole self, something extraordinary happens. You begin to taste true freedom. You are not free because you suppress desire. You are free when you learn to walk beside it, to listen to it, to understand it, to move with it, not as its slave, but also not as its jailer. When desire is recognized, it becomes a compass. But when it is denied, it becomes your destiny. And what kind of destiny is that? A loveless marriage, a career that drains your soul, a fake spirituality that gives you comfort but not depth, a life lived on autopilot, where you smile in photos but cry in silence. You might seem perfectly fine on the outside, but inside, you're dying of thirst. And here's the cruel part. The well is within you. The water you seek has always been there, but you were taught to fear it. Society does not want you to embrace your eros, because someone who makes peace with their shadow is dangerous. They don't obey blindly. They don't consume to fill the void. They don't accept prefabricated narratives. Such a person awakens others, and that is unacceptable in a world built on distraction, sedation, and control. That's why eros has been tamed, ridiculed, moralized, because it is rebellious, it is sacred, it connects you to your personal power, and no one can give you that. Only you can claim it. But be prepared. When you integrate your desire, it does not vanish. It matures. It stops being a childish whim and becomes your internal guide. You begin to choose with intention, to love with presence, to create with power, to live with truth. And even more, you stop blaming the world, because you finally realize that the biggest prison was a door you locked from the inside. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be whole. And being whole means accepting that your desire is not a flaw, not a sin, not a malfunction. It is a signal, a reminder that the fire inside you still burns. And if you care for that fire, not smother it, not let it consume you, it can become your light. Carl Jung said, "Where your fear is, there lies your power." So if your deepest desire terrifies you, perhaps that is exactly where you hid your greatest strength. So now I ask you, will you keep living as if that door doesn't exist? Or will you finally summon the courage to open it? But listen carefully. Once you cross that threshold, you can never go back. You can no longer claim ignorance. Because once you know the truth, it transforms you. And transformation always demands a price. But living in lies, that costs even more. So here we are, maybe at the end, or maybe at the beginning. After everything you've heard, tell me honestly, how many times have you lied to yourself today? How many times did you dress up your desire in the name of productivity? How many times did you call hunger love? How many times did you wear a mask just to avoid scaring others? Right now, you might feel something stirring, a strange sensation, maybe a bit of unease, maybe a tightness in your chest, as if something long asleep inside you has started to move. That's good. That means something has begun to wake up. But don't fool yourself. Truth doesn't set you free right away. First, it destroys everything false. And in that collapse, in that sacred chaos, you begin to find out who you really are. Jung didn't offer us comfort. He offered us a mirror, and not many dare to look. But if you've looked this far, if you've made it all the way to this last word, carrying every other word inside you, then maybe, just maybe, you're already freer than you think. I remember a night, years ago, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Something inside me was burning. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't fear. It was desire. The desire to be real, to be present, to be me. But I didn't know what to do with it. So I wrote. I wrote until my hands ached. And among all the things I poured onto the page, one sentence remained etched in my soul. The part of me that scares me the most might be the one that needs me the most. Today, sharing this with you through this video is my way of telling you that you're not alone. We all carry shadows, hidden fears, doubts, and parts of ourselves that we try to ignore. But it's only when we gather the courage to step into those shadows, to truly face what we've been avoiding, that we begin to uncover the light we've been searching for. That light isn't always loud or dazzling. It can be subtle, like a quiet realization or a gentle shift in perspective. And if you're still here with me now, that means you've walked this path, at least for a moment, and that's something powerful. It means something inside you is ready to grow, to awaken, to remember. Thank you for coming this far with me. That alone is a quiet revolution, a rebellion without noise, a transformation that starts within, invisible to the outside world, but deeply felt on the inside. But now, we've reached a strange part of this ritual, the algorithm. It doesn't understand emotion. It only understands action, and it demands its offering. A click on the like button, a comment, a signal to the machine that something here resonated with you. If not, the algorithm doesn't care. It will let your repressed desires keep choosing your life, your relationships, your patterns, without your permission. So this is where choice comes in. Will you feed the machine mindlessly, or will you play with it consciously? Leave a comment below. Something cryptic, something only the initiated will understand. Something like dominating ledges. Maybe it means nothing, or maybe it means everything. Maybe it's just a whisper from your subconscious trying to speak through symbols. And if you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself, what are you waiting for? Are you expecting a sign from the collective unconscious? A symbol? A synchronicity? A strange coincidence that makes you stop and think, was this really random? Or is something deeper trying to guide me? Well, here it is. The sign, the whisper, the nudge you didn't know you needed. Subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell. It doesn't bite, it awakens. It doesn't trap you. It reminds you. It keeps that doorway open, the one that connects you to thoughts and truths you didn't even know you were searching for. And those videos, right there, floating next to this one of them might hold the key to why you've never truly felt loved. Why, despite everything, you've always carried that emptiness in the background. And the other one, you probably shouldn't watch it before going to sleep. Let's just say, it's the kind of truth that doesn't let your dreams stay peaceful. See you soon. Or maybe, I'll see you in your dreams.